Welcome back to the 21st Century Literature class, your journey from the Philippines and the world. Hola, bonjour, hallo, ciao, or in English, hello. I am Mr. Joshua J. M. Navigar, and I will be your instructor in Questa Legione, or in this lesson. Greek and Roman myths have a lot of stories concerning other deities, demigods, and even human. Some of them had a happy ending while some ended tragically. It's funny how some of the stories reminds me of novels and fairy tales written centuries after, which made me wonder if these Greek and Roman tales inspired those authors. Eight Tales of Lovers showed how they fought for their love and accepted their fate. Here are the eight brief tales of lovers written by Ovid: Pyramus and Thisbe, Orpheus and Eurydice, Ceyx and Alcyone, Pygmalion and Galatea, Baucis and Philemon, Endymion, Daphne, Alpheus and Arethusa. Let's have first the background of the author. Publius Ovidius Naso, known as Ovid. He was born on 20th day of March, 43 before Christ, to 1718 after death. He was the first major Roman poet who lived during the reign of Augustus. He is often ranked as one of the three canonical poets of Latin literature. He was considered as the Latin love elegist by Imperial Kilatan. Let us unravel one of mythological story in Eight Tales of Lovers entitled Pyramus and Thisbe by Publius Ovidius Naso, known as Ovid. But before that, let me give you a short background of this story. Pyramus and Thisbe are a pair of ill-fated lovers whose story forms part of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This story references Greek mythology and the gods, as well as sets up common and recognizable myths for future stories, such as in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Now, let's start. Here are the main characters in this story. Pyramus was the most beautiful youth of Babylon city of Queen Semiramis. Thisbe was the loveliest maiden of all the East who also lived in Babylon, and they were in love. The setting of this story took place in the tomb of Ninus under a tall mulberry tree. For us to comprehend the story well, we will be using the plot diagram. Let's begin with the exposition. Both Pyramus and Thisbe always played together since they were children, but as they grew up, they started falling in love, and both of their families knew about it. But they didn't let them marry each other and separated both of them between a wall. So, Pyramus and Thisbe decided to run away together. Rising action. One day, they arrived at their usual meeting place and decided to meet each other outside the city gate under a mulberry tree. Thisbe was the first one to arrive, so she had to wait for Pyramus. While waiting, a lioness fresh from kill was coming towards her, so she immediately ran to a nearby cave, leaving her veil on the ground, which the lion shredded with her jaws. Meanwhile, Pyramus had arrived at their meeting place. As he was approaching the tree, he noticed the lioness' paw print. Pyramus was so worried as he approached the stream and saw Thisbe's veil torn and shredded. He was unable to find Thisbe and feared that she was dead. Climax. Pyramus started to believe that Thisbe was dead, so he plunged a sword deep into his side. While he was almost laying on the ground, Thisbe was trying to find a mulberry tree with white berries, but then, under with dark red berries, she saw Pyramus on the ground, almost dead. Falling action. Thisbe said her last words and later Pyramus died. Since he was gone, she doesn't have any reason to live. So she plunged into her own heart and kills herself. The resolution. With her last breath, Thisbe begged the gods that both of their bodies be buried in a signal tomb, and that the tree in the special meeting place would always bear fruit in a deep red color, in memory of their tragic love. The two can spend their life together after death. Literary criticism. The author used mythological criticism and different archetypes in this story in order for us to make our lives more significant. Mythological criticism draws on the insights of anthropology, history, psychology, and comparative religion to explore how a text uses myths and symbols drawn from different cultures and epics. When we say archetypes, it is a recurrent symbol or motif, plot, character, image, or setting that appears in art, literature, mythology, and folklore from around the world. The goal of mythological criticism seeks to understand how the story constructs the meaning in the human existence through archetypes like ancient mythology. All literature is a window to creating meaning for a human life. These are the archetypes appeared from this story. The first one is the hero's journey. There are many elements of the hero's journey archetype in this story. The ordinary world is the main characters growing up as neighbors in their Babylonian homes. Their call to adventure is when the two fall in love. The two forbidden lovers cross the threshold when they decide to sneak away and meet face to face at Ninus' tomb. Their enemies include their parents and the random lioness that scares Thisbe away and forces Pyramus to believe his love is dead. The innermost cave is when Pyramus finds Thisbe's bloody veil and assumes she is dead. At this point, he loses the sense of innocence that he once had and kills himself. Thisbe reemerges from her hiding place to find her love has perished, and she too takes her own life. Their seizing the sword is when both stab themselves and take their own lives in order to be with the other forever. The next archetypes are the unhealable wound and ill-fated love. The first one is represented through Pyramus' assumption of Thisbe's death, the unbearable loss of the other, and both of the lovers' stab wounds. The second one is two forbidden lovers who come to a tragic end is displayed as the ill-fated love archetype in this tragedy. We have also the symbolic archetypes, and these are the wall and the berries color. The wall symbolizes the physical separation of circumstances, and it sets up between two close people love with each other. The colors of the berries from the mulberry tree. The color white symbolizes purity, peace, and innocence. The red one, which when the berries are turned red, it represents blood, sacrifice, wounds, death, and violent passion. The last archetypes that we have in this story is what we call character archetypes. The hero, Pyramus and Thisbe are both considered heroes of love. The devil figure in this tragic story is the lioness who causes Thisbe to flee and Pyramus to think she was dead, ultimately leading to the tragic ending. Lastly is the star-crossed lovers, as two people who care immensely but due to their circumstances cannot be together. Pyramus and Thisbe set up the archetype of star-crossed lovers. The theme of Ovid's story, Pyramus and Thisbe, is that true love conquers all, and the plot and symbols combine together to develop that message. When the story begins, the young couple communicates secretly through the wall that separates their rooms because their parents have forbidden their relationship. Unrequited and a sacrificial love, the main characters were willing to do anything to be together. Not even death could keep them apart. At the end, their wishes are honored, their ashes are placed in the same urn. The symbolism of these stories appeared are the wall, berries, and the mulberry tree. First is the wall. The families hate each other, but there's not much they can do about the fact that their houses share a wall, and their children share an immense affection for each other. It means that the wall can be seen as a symbol of hatred that divides the lovers as well as the love that brings them together. The second one is the berries. Pyramus kills himself under the tree with shining white berries. When he plunged the sword in his side, his blood spurted up over the berries and dyed them a dark red. This is a reminder of two lovers who would not let even death part them. Lastly is the mulberry tree. The symbol represents the sacrifice of the lovers make for each other. The moral of the story is that true love beats everything else. Pyramus and Thisbe really loved each other, and they wanted to stay together forever. An example of this is when their parents didn't want them to be in love, but they still talked to each other.